Hi everyone. So in today's video I'll be discussing on lipolysis. Now many of us have come across many articles and many videos on the internet stating that you can burn fat. 3 easy ways of burning fat, remedies, 5 easy exercises that you can burn fat. So many articles and videos you will come across on the internet explaining on how to burn fat. Well, you cannot burn fat, nobody can burn fat, but you can utilize fat. So that's the incorrect way of addressing fat loss. You do not burn fat, nobody can burn fat, but you utilize fat. And why do you utilize fat? You utilize fat because it's a very good source of fuel. So let's get this concept cleared, this myth that you cannot burn fat but you utilize fat because it's a very good source of fuel. Now coming to lipolysis. What is lipolysis? To understand it, let's split the word. So lipo meaning lipid, which is nothing but fat. Lipo is fat and lysis means breakdown. So lipolysis means breaking of fat to produce energy, right? So you do not burn fat, you utilize fat because fat is nothing but stored form of energy. So this energy has to be utilized, and through lipolysis this energy can be utilized. Let us understand with my explanation. Now fat is stored in our body in the adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is the storehouse of energy. Now the fat, suppose this is the fat, it is stored in the form of triglyceride. This all is explained through biochemistry. So fat in the adipocyte is stored in the form of triglyceride. Now triglyceride means 1 glycerol This is 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acids. This is nothing but the fatty acids. Now the fat is stored in the adipose tissue in the form of triglyceride, which is nothing but, this is the representation, 1 glycerol and bonding, this is like the backbone, which is 3 fatty acids are attached to it. Now this triglyceride has to be utilized for energy. Now it is packed in this, it is stored in this. So how do you utilize it? Now we are aware that carbohydrates are a source of fuel, but fats also are a source of fuel. Now this molecule, it has to be cut. It has to be exactly cut here to free these fatty acids and the glycerol. Now how do you cut it? You cut it with the help of a scissor, and the scissor is nothing but an enzyme. So the enzyme known as hormone sensitive lipase. Whenever there is lipase, you know what? Then you know it's an enzyme. And in a chemical reaction, an enzyme is a catalyst. Now, a catalyst helps a reaction. So, this enzyme in biochemistry, it helps to, it's like a scissor. So, it cuts this bonds, frees the fatty acid and the backbone glycerol, it separates it, and you get separate glycerol and fatty acids. Now, this enzyme reacts, which is HSL, hormone sensitive lipase, and it frees it. Now, it detaches the free fatty acid from this molecule of glycerol. So, it becomes separate. And this can be done only with the help of an enzyme. Well, there are 3 enzymes that are responsible for this reaction. Each of these fatty acids, it happens step by step, 1, 2 and 3. But I have not mentioned this. So, I have just mentioned the hormone sensitive lipase because it is pertaining to the hormone which I will be discussing. Now, hormone sensitive means it is sensitive to hormone. Hormone, which is glucagon and epinephrine. So, speaking of glucagon, only when there is high level of glucagon hormone, then only HSL enzyme will help in this breaking of the glycerol and fatty acids to give us energy. That is how we can utilize our fat for energy. Whenever the glucagon level is high, there will be use of this free fatty acid and glycerol. Now, it's like a seesaw example. Now, this is a seesaw. So, whenever this glucagon hormone level is high, then insulin level is low. They act opposite to each other. So, whenever insulin level is low, glucagon level is high. Whenever glucagon level is high, there will be continuously use of the fatty acids and the glycerol for energy. That is, this stored form of energy, the fat, it will get activated and it will break open and it will get into your blood and being used for a source of fuel, as a source of fuel, energy. But whenever there is high level of insulin, the opposite happens. Now, whenever the insulin level is high, the reverse happens. There is always fat accumulating, fat deposition. And whenever glucagon level is low, fat deposition happens, fat storage. And whenever glucagon level is high, there is always fat utilization. Right? So, glucagon and insulin act opposite to each other. Whenever glucagon is high, there is always fat utilization. That time insulin level is low. Whenever insulin level is high and glucagon is low, there is always fat being stored. Right? So, now hormone sensitive lipase enzyme gets activated with high level of glucagon. And the free fatty acid is separated from the glycerol. Now, this free fatty acid, it enters into the blood. Free fatty acids, they enter into the blood. and in the blood through beta oxidation they can be used as a source of energy. Through beta oxidation they get converted to acetyl CoA coenzyme and they enter into the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle. Citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle or the TCA cycle. Now I'll be explaining about the Krebs cycle, the TCA cycle in my upcoming videos. It is through this that we get energy. How energy is produced in our body, we'll get a detailed understanding and explanation to this. So for our understanding, the free fatty acids, the three free fatty acids, which is long chain carbon, it may be 18 to 22, 29 carbon, it can be very long chain carbon. They get freed and they enter into the blood and through beta oxidation, that is in the presence of oxygen, through the respective metabolic pathways they get converted to acetyl CoA and then they enter into the Krebs cycle producing energy, which is nothing but ATP. Now through beta oxidation there are only some tissues in the body that cannot utilize the free fatty acids, the fat, that is the cells of the brain and the RBCs. They cannot use fat as a source of fuel because they lack mitochondria, right? So because they don't have mitochondria, they cannot use fat through beta oxidation. Now let us understand glycerol. Now this glycerol, it goes to the liver because liver has the enzyme Glycerol kinase. Now glycerol kinase, it converts this glycerol into glycerol 3-phosphate. So I will write it. Glycerol gets converted to glycerol 3-phosphate. With the help of glycerol kinase enzyme, which is present in the liver, and this in turn it gets converted to DHAP in the presence of the enzyme glycerol 3-phosphate dehydrogenase. So two enzymes, glycerol kinase converts glycerol to glycerol 3-phosphate, and this in turn gets converted to DHAP in the presence of the enzyme glycerol 3-phosphate dehydrogenase. Now DHAP is nothing but dihydroxyacetone phosphate. Now it's very important to understand that glycerol, it gets converted to DHAP, which is an intermediate of glycolysis pathway. Now what is glycolysis? Now the body produces energy, right, which is ATP. Glucose getting converted to pyruvate. Is nothing but glycolysis. This pathway, glucose getting converted to pyruvate, is nothing but glycolysis. Now this DHAP is a part of glycolysis. It is an intermediate of glycolysis. So this glycerol, it gets converted to all these molecules, these reactions, and it gets converted to DHAP, which is a part of this glycolysis metabolic pathway. And this is how now from pyruvate again gets converted to acetyl CoA, which again it enters into the Krebs cycle to produce energy. Which is ATP. Now Krebs cycle, the reactions of glycolysis, all this I'll be explaining in my upcoming videos for you all to get an understanding that fat can be used as a source of energy. Just like we are aware that carbohydrates are a source of energy, fats also are a stored form of energy. And you do not burn fat, but you utilize fat because it's an excellent source of energy. Fat is energy dense. That's the reason 1 gram of carbohydrate will give you 4 calories, whereas 1 gram of fat will give you 9 calories. This is how you understand that fat is very energy dense. It produces a lot of energy. With this, the metabolism of fat, we can get a thorough understanding. So through fatty acids, that is through beta oxidation, almost 95% of the energy, it comes from beta oxidation, right? So 95% of the energy, it comes from triglycerides, that is through the fatty acids through beta oxidation, and the rest 5% comes through glycerol. So therefore fats can be used as a source of energy. Fat is nothing but stored form of energy, stored energy, and this can be activated, this can be attacked, this can be freed, the glycerol fatty acid, which enters into the blood, and the glycerol, it goes to the liver to get metabolized. Free fatty acids enter into the blood through beta oxidation. It can be used as a source of energy because it gets converted to their respective acetyl CoA, then it gets into the Krebs cycle and they yield a lot of energy, ATPs. So fat needs to be utilized. It gets activated with the hormone sensitive lipase enzyme, and this can be done only with the help of that key, which is nothing but the hormone glucagon. Whenever glucagon level is high, fat will be used as a source of energy. It will break open. That is when insulin level is low. But this fat will not be utilized. It will get only stored. That is when insulin level is high. It will only help in fat storage. That is when glucagon level is low. So by this I guess we should get a thorough understanding of lipolysis. Lipolysis is nothing but breaking down of fat and using it as a source of energy. Fat is a very good source of energy, very energy dense, which gives us 9 calories compared to carbohydrate which is only 4 calories.